Thank you, Sanjay. Thank you everybody for being here. The theme of Blume Day this year is The Force Awakens. I wonder where we got that from. To add a bit of Star Wars flavor to each session, so this first session is going to be about doing business in Asia. And the way I see it is, it's the Indian Force Awakens, if you will. Because a lot of our startups are now looking actively at doing business outside just India, across Asian countries. And what we try to do with every session is try to get a combination of investors and corporates to interact with the founders, right? So for the first session, we've got Mansaj, who's going to moderate the session. Mansaj is the co-founder of Threadsol, with a product called Indelocard. So it's a very profitable startup working in the garments and apparel domain and is working in 12 countries with over 80 manufacturers. Their technology saves manufacturers potentially $5 million annually through material planning. He can explain how after the event if you're interested. We've also got Hiro-san. Hiro-san is a very active investor and supporter of companies mainly in mobile internet space across US, China, Japan and Southeast Asia. He's invested already in almost 25 companies in 10 months in India. We've also got Dirk, who's founded 6 companies since college. The scorecard reads 2 exits, 2 dividend plays and 2 failures. And I think the failures teach you much more than the successes, I think. In 2014, he teamed up with Teru Sato and Hiro Maeda to form Beenext, which is an early stage Singapore-based $60 million investment fund. And finally, we've also got Mr. Nath, Dilip Nath, who is, some of you may know as Sanjay's father, so in a sense, we're all here because of him. He co-founded Kanbay in the 90s, which listed on Nasdaq and has grew to over 6,000 employees in 4 continents and was acquired by Capgemini. He's very actively involved in incubating, advising and mentoring startups, and he divides his time across Singapore and India. So hopefully a very relevant mix of people, and over to Mansaj now to take the session forward. Thank you.
I do have a comment on my Am I audible back there? Right. I actually wanted to do a stand-up on the entire startups ecosystem that's going on here. But these guys said, no, you cannot say those things in any stage right now because you're raising funds. So we're going to give you a stage which is probably more apt for you. So just to give you a quick brag minute from me. So my name is Mansaj. We run a small startup here which is now Singapore-based. We were profitable from day one. Blume was our first investor, Rajan was our first investor. We've now moved on from India to 12 countries with 80 people. We're working with 70, 80 top manufacturers around the globe. So basically what we do is with our products we save them manufacturing costs for the people who are making garments and apparels around the world. And currently we are planning 2 million pieces of garments every day with our software. And our software is currently powering $2 billion of business, which people call GMV. I don't believe in that shit, but nevertheless, that's what it is. So we've been profitable, we've been doing all right. So that's why probably we've been an opportunity to talk to you gentlemen, because our business is mostly in the Asian region. So the chick says I can start with Hiro-san, but it's going to be inconvenient to start with you, sir, because you're right here. So I applied for Kanbay once upon a time in 2000, sometimes when I was rejected. So I have some personal connect here, right? I mean, I want to ask you why was I rejected, but my question is, since it was Canada, Mumbai, right? Canada, Bombay. It's how Kanbay came into being, right? And then went to so many countries. Give me a couple of extremely important things to take back for making a larger international story, starting from the Indian roots. That's very important.
Okay. Let me answer your first question first. I think whoever interviewed you, I don't know who it was, probably thought you were not cut out for that industry, and that there was something in you which cut you out for what you finally did.
Yeah, that's fair problem.
So you probably should, we'll probably send you an invoice in a little while. Talking about how we did it, a little bit of history is relevant here. When we started off, there were no satellite links in India, and what we were doing is we were going to be developing software in India for world markets. And the perception of India in those days was that, the movie Gandhi had released and all of that, and people thought that, we were asked as to what our software professionals will be wearing when they show up for work and all of that. So we decided the first thing we're going to do is we'll set it up in the US. Initially, to test market it, it was in Canada. That's how the name Kanbay came. But then we moved it to Chicago, set it up there. So initially, we established in the US, had nothing in India, then came to India. So the good thing that happened was our image was that of a US company, but we were offering some blended rates which no US company could offer.
So basically, if I can just take back the optics of the business, where it is based, was an extremely important component for the growth and stuff, because they could see it's a US based company, so probably has more credibility than an Indian based company. Is that how it looks like?
Well, I said about history. At that time, the image of India was that we were the low cost providers. It was labor arbitrage. So we turned that thing around and said, no, we are a US company. We give you two options. We'll either do it for you here, by which you pay this much, or we will not have any drop in quality, and we'll do it for you with a blended with people here and in India. And once the market took off, we did everything in India. So we used that, because otherwise to break into the market, you had to break the image that people had. And luckily for us that worked, and so you got a high price point. Otherwise we would have had to work our way up from a low price point up.
Well, that resonates very much with us, because that's exactly what we are trying to do as well. So we are exactly following the same principles.
Singapore.
Yes, sir. We are in Singapore. Okay. So now, Hiro-san.
Yes.
You've been investing in mobile technologies for a while now in India, China, US, all these countries. Specifically toward looking at Asia, right? It's a very different market than what I've seen typically in US and Europe. What do you think are a couple of important indicators that an organization must bear in their mind so as they can succeed in the Asian market, specifically in the Asian context I'm talking about? Yep. If you could just give us a few points, it would be helpful.
Okay. Yes. I'm basically hopping around all over the countries: the US, Japan, China, and Southeast Asia. For the last 16 years, I've been investing in 450 companies: the US, Japan, China, Southeast Asia. I'm still keeping, contacting a lot of people. So through those activities, I found the here in India. There are a bunch of the good technology company and talented people. So if you have the strong confidence and for your product, and then if you feel like maybe a ROI, a return on investment in this country of your product is a little bit lower, and then maybe you can find the other opportunities overseas. For example, if you feel like the revenue per user a little bit small, and then you have the strong confidence for your product, and then if you have some sort of good mentor, and then please talk with those guys, and then if you find the revenue per user or output or those kind of numbers attractive. For example, Japan is very high. Revenue can be expected if you grab the one customer, maybe corporate or consumer. So in that case, maybe you can at least try to try to expand your services to Japan, for example. And then I've been seeing for last year again 25 investment and 700 company we see, and more than 1,000 business card we exchange. I really found there's a bunch of very good service companies. So I think at least you have the confidence. Once again, let's talk. I'm still hopping around. I try to understand the local business market situation, and then easy for me to grab the potential business.
Just staying on this. Sorry to interrupt you on this. Because see, what I understand looking at these markets like Vietnam, Indonesia, Thailand, China, you cannot really do the business unless and until you have some local people helping you with this. Like for example, the example that Kanbay could do with people putting them in the US, it's almost impossible to replicate that in, let's say, a geography like China. Because there's a very strong regional bias, which is inherent in the entire Asian ecosystem, which is a very big barrier to entry for a lot of brands for us. But I agree with the fact that you said that, the confidence in your product and ability to look for a greener pasture which will give you per unit economics a better return is definitely something to look forward to. So thanks a lot for that, sir. I appreciate that answer. Dirk, all right, it's now your turn, right? So 6 startups, right? Serial rapists, serial killers are not respected. Serial entrepreneurs are, right? It's a good thing for you. But just quickly putting down the things, I think you got 2 startups which failed. 2 went through exits. 2 are now dividend plays. So it's basically teams, right? Some teams win, some teams lose. Is there a specific trend towards winning and hiring a winning team? Because that's a very important ingredient for success for any organization, right? It's at the beginning founder driven, but very quickly it becomes what your people can do. So I just want to understand from a very clear your past experience. Is there a correlation between winning and choosing a winning team?
So maybe first of all, really congratulations, I think, to Sanjay and Karthik and what they have built here with Blume Ventures. Thank you very much for the invitation. I think I've watched Blume for a while, and it's really phenomenal what the company has built and the ecosystem of entrepreneurs that come out of the inner family of Blume, but also extended family of Indian entrepreneurs by now. Actually, one of the failures that I started was in 2009 here in India. So I lived in India for 2 years and built a company in the private shopping space, right? And I tried to understand why we failed, right? And I think one of the reasons certainly was and is team. And it's a large portion, very large portion as well as timing. Has the time of the idea arrived, or is the market ripe for this kind of model? Is the market ripe for the type of e-commerce model you're driving? Back then, and I start now to see the nuances that I'm back as an investor. Back then, it was really hard to attract IIT and IIM students to join a startup that nobody heard of. Now, if you go out and you talk to any founder, if they have trouble hiring from these universities, it's usually quite the opposite, right? 80% of the more successful startups are founded by people with associations to these schools. So I think team is critical, and that has been proven also in the last few years here, that like really solid teams from solid schooled educational background, but also professional ripeness, building better companies. But the other one is timing. I think the timing of
Let me put a quick rebuttal to that, right? My point is that look at the way professional sports is played, right? Look at what Real Madrid once upon a time picked up. It picked up Luis Figo, Zidane, you had Roberto Carlos. You're all the best players that they could pick up. You did not win a single silverware, right? The entire Real Madrid team, which was like hundreds of millions of dollars thrown into it. So the point that you mentioned, that these guys are able to pick up folks from IITs and IIMs without any problems because they're big bucks, paying them, backing it up. Now, winning teams may not always come from big bucks, right? So specifically to Asian context, right? Like because you're talking about how can we expand our horizons in Asia specifically. What would be your one important, directive to the entrepreneurs here? A risk which we must mitigate. And this question, by the way, gentlemen, will come back to you in the same order. Unfortunately, you're the one holding the mic, so you have no time to think. And here's your answer.
The short one is, it depends. It really depends which market you're active. So let's say contextually, I think on the landscape space.
So let me kind of make it very simple, right? There are two types of startups here, right? One is enterprise startups, and then there are consumer internet ones, right?
Yes.
So let's address one risk for each of these guys, which you can think from your perspective towards the Asian market, because some of us are here working toward the internet business, some of us are working for enterprises. We must get some return of investment from this entire panel discussion, right?
So I think like on the consumer side, often you, or both sides it applies, but on the consumer side, there are prominent examples that you need a local protectorate from an investor point of view, whether it's an Indonesia conglomerate or a private equity fund that's very well connected locally, or VCs that know people inside out. Very good example in that space would be a Gojek that was shut down for 24 hours, and then one of the senior investors had to call up the president and basically reverse that decision within 12 hours.
I use them very frequently when I go to Indonesia.
Exactly.
Awesome.
So I think on that side, if you really get to scale, you need some sort of local protection, and especially fundamental place, whether it's logistics, whether it's payment, whether it's, so that has a very strong local component, and I don't think that will change. Other businesses that invite for internationalization on the B2B side, I think there I would really ask myself where the decision making is made, and a lot of these B2B plays originate in Singapore, depending which industry. But where's the decision made, and can we go into that market instead of entering maybe a cheaper version and then ending up with very, very long sales cycles that cut your legs off while you run?
Yeah, that's a great point, by the way, because I can relate from the business we are into. So governments and apparels are like all over China, but a major part of decision making happens in Hong Kong. So you can go blind going all over in China in their bullet trains and their like flights and stuff. But if you want the decision done, you got to be either in Guangzhou or in Hong Kong to make that point. I mean, I think that's a fabulous point.
Information hubs, right? And essentially you would have to look at the network density on Facebook probably, and look how many international connections a person on average in Singapore has. It's phenomenal. So like the type of information flow is a lot faster than in any other regional hub.
Thank you. So same question, sir.
Okay, and localization is a key all the time, I think. And as I told you, confidence is important, right? But at the same time, you need to get the more flexibility for the localization, because the behavior local, business custom local, and as Dirk said, government regulation and guidelines totally different. So how to localize is one of the key issues. For example, like my friend UC China came to India. This is other direction, but they struggling how to do localize for the last 4 years. Did great job, and then successfully 51% the total market share. But fortunately, my other friend line, Japan, came here, spent a lot of money for the advertisement, couldn't get a lot of customer, clients, consumers, users, and then almost gave up the strategies and stuff. So the difference between the two companies, like one guy is trying to struggle how to adjust themselves to local. And for example, they try to grab the people needs, behavior, understand, analyze business behavior, and then make the modify the service little bit to adjust the local people. But the other guy just spending money for the advertisement to acquire users, but couldn't grab the.
When we entered the markets in Bangladesh, we realized that you can't ask for $65,000 for them to pay for it. So you put them a smaller localized number like $15,000 and say, you know what, it's a small number. You can bite the larger cherry if the software and the solution proves itself. I think this is amazing, because this is something, this localization characteristic in Asia is very, very strong. It's not as standardized as what's there in the West. So I appreciate you pointing that out, so thank you very much.
Yeah, so strong confidence, localization, and also maybe grab the very good guy, communicatable with you, at the same time knows the local. So
Thank
this headhunting is very other key.
Thank you. Mr. Nath, your views on the risks that a B2B and a B2B startup should look out for while expanding in Asia?
Well, for a B2B, I think if you want to get good traction quickly, you should also consider, depending upon what stage you're at, a joint venture. Because I think if there's skin in the game from both sides, I think there's a good chance of that succeeding. Because especially when you know that localization is important, you know that decision making is both ways. You talked about going to Guangzhou or wherever that is and talking to the decision makers there. The people who, your customers also want decisions to be made not back in India or anywhere else, you want to be made there. So if you hire somebody or you have a channel partner, that decision making generally doesn't happen, doesn't inspire confidence. So you got to have the decision making there. The other element I'll talk about is the one team concept, which is when you talk to people, you appoint somebody with the best resume, who's done a great job, track record and sales skills and all of that. The person doesn't produce, and then you find out the language. When the language being used is the problem lies at head office or the problem lies back home, and you see all of that. So therefore that one team concept where you might even have economic sort of upside linked to both sides, that will work. Because in our business, for example, so long as the US team and the Indian team functioned as two separate entities and their performance appraisals and all were de-linked, they were marching on different tracks. The minute you link them up, they all worked as one.
Thanks a lot for that. We might just have enough time for taking two questions.
One quick question.
All right, audience, two questions. What do you get? One or two? One. Okay.
One.
Who's the lucky-
And we're around, we're not going anywhere.
Yeah, you can connect
of course,
us
you
offline.
can chat them up. That's all right. All right, audience. The nation wants to know who has the question there. Yes, please stand up. Give him the mic.
I think you guys can hear me, right?
Yeah, we can do it.
Okay, so my question actually is around consumer internet plays in the region. I wanted to get a sense on your guys' view on Southeast Asian consumers and monetization around digital content and whether that's something that has picked up at all. I mean, in India, I think getting consumers to pay for content in general is really hard. So I just wanted to get a sense of you as to where Southeast Asia was.
Yeah, before you answer the question, sir, can I get your name and your company, please?
My name is Gautam, and I run a company called Audio Compass. What we do is we make smartphones into personal tour guides for tourists who travel across India and Southeast Asia. So hence the question.
Good question. I think again, it depends, but in short, I mean, the social gaming has produced some of the biggest companies also in Southeast Asia. So you have VNG in Vietnam, you have Garena in Singapore, and the majority of the revenue comes actually out of the region, and these are billion-dollar companies. So it is possible, and you have even payment gateway companies that specialize on digital content. So there's a market for it, and they're active in that region. So they're introducing carrier billing, etc., etc. Now, I think sometimes depends on what line of business you specifically are into. I think one thing, like when you're coming out of India, you really have to understand. Like I know that Indian entrepreneurs are very close to the US, and partially due to our NRIs in the US, that has a huge influence on the ecosystem, both on the investing, but also on monetization and how you think about markets. But I really think that Southeast Asia is more like Europe. It's very fragmented. Every country has to be pretty localized, so it starts with incorporation, payment gateways. The landscape is very, very varied, so don't underestimate sort of the country by country efforts you have, and are there other pockets you should look at first maybe that have, for whatever type of product you're dealing in, are more attractive.
Thanks a lot. Thanks. Well, that will be all for the moment because we are out of time. Thanks a lot, fam. I really appreciate you guys being here.
A big round of applause. We have a quick time now close, which is going to be presented to each panelist here as a token of our thanks. Thank you very much. Even the moderators. Okay. So. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.